This is Off Topic, a show where two men with the attention spans of a squirrel try and fail to stay on topic with today's subject. Where will their oral meanderings take us? Well, stick around and listen, because today's Off Topic is... Part 2 of our Howard the Duck episode. In Part 1, we talked about the origins of our suit-wearing duck and the events leading up to his movie. In Part 2 here, we're going to pick back up talking about the production of this train wreck of a movie and how Howard's comic career fared afterwards. 3 months until shooting, that dynamic duo went to work, and what they did was actually pretty impressive, you gotta admit, for what they pulled out. In fact, Howard the Duck was the first freestanding animatronic puppet ever, meaning it didn't have guide wires or a base holding it up. And this was something the E.T. puppet couldn't even do at that time. Because yeah, apparently E.T., for his scenes, he either had to have guide wires holding him up or like a base holding him into place for the puppet. However, one problem was durability was an issue because they had to make him so fast, as the puppet was prone to fabric rips and tears. In fact, the very first scene where they had the animatronic head talk, it immediately ripped open the mouth, and they had to go in damage control and repair the whole head. In fact, this actually happened enough that by the end of the shooting, the head had been repaired so many times that it didn't really look the same. In fact, that some of the damage repairs were so intense that by the end of shooting, they actually had to go back and reshoot some scenes because the puppet looked so different from its original incantation.
Oh, for real? That's funny.
Yeah. Yep. A lot of ripped fabric.
So what we're seeing is on screen, we end up seeing the final result, not necessarily like how it originally started.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and there's also a bunch of they've made multiple puppets for different scenes. So apparently, if you're very observant, you can actually tell the difference in bill sizes between certain puppets in certain scenes, because they were basically in a hurry and they couldn't make sure every puppet was exactly the same.
Whatever, get it out, go.
Yeah, basically, we have 3 months. Let's do this.
They're shooting in 5 minutes. Get out of there.
Yeah, that's probably about what it was, to be honest. Another problem they had with the animatronics was the sheer amount of wires running to Howard. Because if you don't know this, when you run a lot of wires alongside together for long distances, you get something called crosstalk. And that can cause interference, cause, mixed signals go between the wires. So sometimes Howard wasn't exactly doing what he was supposed to. And it was also causing interference with some cameras and audio equipment, and made it very difficult to shoot some of the close-up expressions sometimes because the face would just do weird stuff.
Huh, I was not aware of that. Crosstalk?
Yep. Yeah, it's called crosstalk wires. It'll also happen in, sometimes you can get it with spark plug wires in old cars if you run too long. That's where I originally learned about it.
I mean, is that true for, phone lines too, or?
It depends on how well they're shielded. Because you can, shield them with rubber coating, and that helps.
Okay.
Yeah. That also depends on how much power is running through them, too, to be honest. It's a lot of different varieties. But also, I saw the cable lines that they're running for Howard, and we're talking, it was, a 6-inch bundle of just micro cables running across the floor.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it kind of looked like they're building a space shuttle at times with all the wires running around everywhere. In the end, this impressive but flawed suit wound up costing them $2 million, which actually was not the most expensive part of the show by a long shot, really. Universal pokes their head in the writing room and has a couple more demands to go with their previous ones. First, they need a huge final battle against a big monster, just like in Ghostbusters, because they wanted to be this to be the next Ghostbusters. So they're like, hey, we want our own version of the Stay Puft Man in this. Their next demand, we wanted a car chase scene in the movie. Why? Because car chase scenes were just the thing you did back then. Whether they're good or bad, every movie seemed to want to just jam in a car chase. Sometimes a car driving on 2 wheels, usually going over a jump, driving through a pile of garbage. You know the routine.
Freeze frame is midair.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we never knew how we got in this position. So, yeah, and honestly, most of the time car chases aren't that great. I will admit the Blues Brothers had a pretty funny car chase where the cops kept trying to jump the gap, and then eventually it's just car after car after car going off the cliff.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. So for the big budget...
Wasn't the one that ended off, the end of the movie, there was just a literal giant pile of cars?
Yeah, I believe there was. For the big budget monster fight at the end of the studio wanted, they decided to go full stop motion. Something near and dear to my heart here, because I like stop motion. It's fun. Even modern day stop motion is really cool. You just can't get the same effects from hand-drawn or computer animation in my mind.
So, yeah, I really dig well done. Hell, even a poorly done, as long as it stays in its lane,
Yeah, exactly. Because you can that
you,
janky 12 frames per second stop motion kind of looks cool in its own way. You got to admit.
Yeah, if that's your style and that's what you're going with, and the whole thing is like that, then it's good. But if that's you're trying to integrate it into oh no, this is real life. Look,
that doesn't work.
Right, this monster, no. Denied.
But I even like the little stop motion where it's just like almost a frame every second that people do. It's just like a little teddy bear going around cooking in a kitchen or something like that. It's like, hey, that takes effort and time and thought and neat. So for the stop motion, they went with Phil Tippett of Industrial Light and Magic. His very first stop motion project was, for the time of that, pretty cool looking and imaginative space chess scene from Star Wars. Remember that little holographic, like 4-tier chess thing that they had? Yeah, that was one of the first things he ever did. He also went on to do the Tauntauns, the Rancor, a ton of other stuff. He is basically a stop motion legend. If it was stop motion in the 80s, there's pretty good chance he had a hand in it. Phil Tippett was also the man who, when he was working on Jurassic Park, he was the guy that Steven Spielberg famously turned to him when he saw the CGI graphics and said, "You're out of a job," to which Tippett replied, "Don't you mean I'm extinct?" That exchange actually made it into the Jurassic Park movie.
But didn't they have him... They kept him on as like the... What do they call him? The
special effects supervisor for Jurassic Park special effects.
Is that what he was?
He was like the dinosaur advisor or something like that.
I thought it was something like that, where like dinosaur or whatever.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it's not like he was completely out of the job. He still worked after Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, just because I think he, that's a good quip. It's a great line. I mean, don't you mean extinct? That really is a great line. However, not everything's going to jump. Just like, going to video games. When Nintendo, the NES or the Super Nintendo, and then they went 16-bit, and then it went to the PS. There's now full 3D visual worlds. It's like there's still room for a
the
nice
2D sprite,
16-bit. Like there's plenty of room for those. So yeah, I'm sure you're right. He didn't go outside and like someone, the little boy crying shot him in the head because.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say that much like the 2D 8-bit games of our youth, stop motion is probably more popular now than it was in the late 90s because, Studio Leica and all them guys doing their own little projects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of have us a little bit of a resurgence. And also Phil Tippett, after Howard the Duck, he went on to do Ed 209, the bugs from Starship Troopers, and a bunch of the dinosaurs on Jurassic Park, like we mentioned. Also, he just released a movie a couple of years ago on Shudder called Mad God that I want to see. It looks very bizarre and weird. For the chase scene, they decided to do a scene where Howard would be pursued by the police while piloting an ultralight aircraft. This scene would be shot in Petaluma, California, the same town as George Lucas film American Graffiti. So, maybe this is part of like a Lucas cinematic universe, especially since they have a Raiders of the Lost Ark joke in Howard the Duck. So, hey, maybe...
Do they? Oh, yeah, they do.
Yeah, it was one of those posters. It's like, in Duck World, there's Indiana Jones. As is tradition, chase scenes are very expensive to do, and this mind-numbing 20-minute-ish scene was the most expensive part of the movie, due to all the stunt drivers and reshoots and vehicle wrecks, and the fact that you basically have to shut down an entire town to do this.
And pointless.
Yes, and also, Universal kind of sprung this on them a little bit later than they should have, so in a panic, they had to hire an entire third crew to shoot this scene. To shoot the scene, they recruited director Joe Johnson, who also worked with George Lucas doing stuff in the Star Wars movies and the first Indiana Jones movies. Most notably, this guy was known for designing Boba Fett's looks in the Star Wars series. And he also played bit parts as Death Star Trooper in the original Star Wars and Captain Sean Valdez in Empire Strikes Back. After this, he would go on to direct Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, The Rocketeer, and he's also the dude who designed The Iron Giant. So for the soundtrack part of the movie, there's actually some interesting characters here too. First, the actual orchestral score was done by John Barry, who is famous for doing the many James Bond movies at this point. And he actually did a ton of soundtracks right up until Howard, and he didn't do anything after Howard the Duck. I looked into it and know this movie did not kill him, but I guess he just retired shortly thereafter. From trauma? Maybe.
I'm done. Yeah. I'm out.
My name is attached to this movie. I must vanish now. So there's a band called Cherry Bomb in it that Leah Thompson, the actress, headed. And they wanted the band to look legit, act legit, and actually be able to play instruments and perform a little bit. So they hired a rock and roll crew to train them on how to perform. And this was actually an interesting all-star crew as well. First was Thomas Dolby, who wrote most of the songs in the movie and is considered one of the godfathers of 80s synth. He most famously song of his is Blinded Me with Science. She blinded me with science. That one.
Oh, neat. Yep.
Yeah, but he's done a ton of other stuff. Yeah, if you look him up, his production thing is just miles and miles long. He also makes a cameo in the movie as a beret-wearing bartender who helps Howard win a fight. Next up was Allie Willis, a name you won't know, but she wrote some huge hits like September by Earth, Wind, and Fire. She also wrote for Gladys Knight and the Pips, Cyndi Lauper, etc., and she even wrote the Friends theme song, which she calls the whitest song she ever wrote.
And that she would be correct.
She would be correct. That is one of the whitest songs ever written, I believe. Finally, was the incomparable George Clinton of Parliament Funkadelic fame, one of the biggest influences on funk music ever. And these three would get together and would write the very tepid title song, Howard the Duck, performed by the fictitious band Cherry Bomb. Not a great song, but apparently it worked because for most of my life after seeing that movie, at the age of 10 or whatever, one of the main things I remember from that was that song, Howard the Duck. Do, 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 do. Yeah, it only shows up at the end. It's not good. And then you get to see Howard pull out a guitar and play it just like from Back to the Future. It's dumb. That scene cheapens the whole movie.
It does.
It really does. It was just like, really? Do we need to end this with a musical number? Ugh. That's probably a universal thing as well. So, with the effects crew together, next up was casting the actors for the role. For the role of Howard the Duck himself, they initially wanted 12-year-old dwarf actor Jordan Prentice to play the role. He later went on to play the giant bag of weed in Harold and Kumar. Go to White Castle. Yeah, there you go.
What do you know for? Well,
he actually did a bunch of other stuff too, but that was the most notable one that I pulled off. He's in a bunch of other little comedy bits here and there doing this and that, so he's still acting pretty regularly. Good for him. However, he wound up not doing the lion's share of the acting bits because he was a little kid with a little dwarf bladder, he had to pee a lot, and they had to pull him in and out of the costume, and every time they had to pull him in and out of the costume, it took about an hour to get you in the costume, an hour to get you out. So that took a long time. Child labor laws said he could only work 8 hours a day, and when you're taking a kid in and out of Sue lot because he's got to pee, that takes some extra time.
That'd be infuriating.
Yeah, and also too, apparently that suit, this probably didn't help him having to pee a lot too. Apparently that suit was super hot on the inside, basically like a sauna. And the mask, because his animatronic had so many motors and servos in there, the head would heat up so much that he would actually get burns on his face. And that was not good. In fact, they actually had to take hair dryers and put them on just the cool setting and just between takes, just jam that in the mouth of the duck and just turn it on, just blow all the heat out they could in between takes because it was so god awful hot and miserable inside that suit.
Meanwhile, his mom's on the side, as they're shooting, going, "Come on, honey. Yeah, you can do it. He'll be fine.
I already put the down payment on that car, hun."
Yeah. You can't quit. It's can you hold it for longer? They're going to fire you.
Yeah. I didn't blow that producer for nothing, son.
Right. Do you realize how much weight I've gained from blowing all those guys?
My body's not made for this much protein. Because of all these issues, they eventually let Howard's stuntman Ed Gale do most of the work. This was Ed's first role in Hollywood, but not his last. After Howard, Mel Brooks cast him as Dink in Spaceballs, stating, "Anyone good enough to work on Howard the Duck is good enough to work with me." He then also went on to play Chucky in the first two Child's Play movies. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, and he's done a bunch of other stuff since then, too. And they did still keep using Jordan Prentice. They alternated between the 12-year-old and the adult, which kind of caused some problems in some scenes because adults and children have different ideas on things. So a good example is when you tell, "Hey, Howard, go saunter up to Leah Thompson." A 12-year-old and a 30-year-old are going to saunter extremely differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that kind of, little things like that made it very noticeable for editors to have to work around. Another thing that made the movie kind of a pain in the ass. So, yeah, and also between those two people being in the suit and everybody working the animatronic head, I believe it was 9 people were involved at working with Howard during the shoot.
Mm-hmm.
So, very busy times for Howard. Now on to the main actors. It should be noted that every person who got hired for this really, really was all in on it. They're like, "Hey, this is going to be George Lucas. They're going to make several of these movies. It's going to be a franchise just like Indiana Jones and Star Wars. This is our gravy train. We are set for life. Woo! Howard the Duck 1, 2, and 3. Here we come." Which, you can't really blame them because, kind of what everybody was thinking at that time.
There had to be signs. There had to be signs.
Well,
you can't
also,
make
we're talking
a movie
before the movie was actually put out, kind of thing.
Well, still making a movie. You can't make a movie. You're an actor saying certain lines, and there wasn't a single moment you're like, "Whew, I don't know, man."
Well, no. By the time the movie was about to release, they had kind of changed their tone a little bit. But remember, we're still at the point where they're like, hey, you want to work on a George Lucas movie about a duck? And they were just like, sure. Howard the Duck movie by George Lucas? That seems like a movie that people have talked about for decades with fondness and revelry. Well, they're kind of half right on that. People did talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
First off was actually fan of the comic book Leah Thompson for the main role opposite Howard. She was hot off the success of Back to the Future and a big name at the time, but also competing for that role was Tori Amos, Belinda Carlisle, and Cyndi Lauper because it was, a musical role. So they were trying to get a bunch of musicians in there too. To give her a leg up, Leah went to a thrift store and decided to put together a rock and roll punk outfit by herself and show up for her audition in that. She said she managed to cobble together a look that she said was a cross of Madonna and Cyndi Lauper, and the producers loved that look so much that they gave her the role. I kind of like the fact she was auditioning against Cyndi Lauper, and she apparently outdressed Cyndi Lauper.
It's the same look.
Okay. I would say Madonna's a sluttier version of Cyndi Lauper.
I'll grant you that. I was about to say that. I would take a step back and Madonna being more slutty, but not by a lot. I don't know. I'm maybe my memory's changing it, but I don't remember a huge difference between, I guess Cyndi Lauper's more colorful.
Cyndi Lauper's way more colorful. Cyndi Lauper's more kind of colorful, punky Brewstery looking, whereas Madonna's more like leather and whippy sort of.
Okay, I retract my statement. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know. In my mind's eye, they're basically the same. And I was working movie theater. Evita came out. That's dumb. I don't want to watch it.
That's where they sang a lot.
Yeah. And what's funny is okay, I don't know exactly what the movie's about, but I do know this. The money they were using in that, historically, Argentina, how they had all that money is Jewish gold. All these Nazis stole all these from gold fillings and the watches, and they took all these Jewish gold. They ran away to Argentina, so it's Nazi Jew blood gold. And they're like, "We don't cry for me, Argentina, but never mind. Don't look behind the curtain."
You do not want to see how this sausage is made.
You will not like it. And if you do like it, I don't know you.
Speaking about pulling back the curtain and seeing how sausage is made, back to Howard the Duck's production.
Back to Howard the Duck.
Yep. Tim Robbins was cast as the janitor science assistant that helps out Howard. He was more or less an unknown actor at this point, but did manage to beat out Jay Leno for the role, apparently. At this point, he was only really known for a couple roles. He was in Saint Elsewhere as a domestic terrorist, and he was in a little bit part in Toy Soldiers and the show Hill Street Blues. One thing he's famous for, though, he helped found the Actors Gang, a theater troupe out of Southern California that eventually gave us Tenacious D.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. So, hey, without him, maybe no Tenacious D, and the world would be a worse place. The man who played the bad guy in this movie, and also in real life, was Jeffrey Jones. He was cast in this movie because people were very impressed with his job in Amadeus a few years prior. He was also the bad guy in Ferris Bueller and Beetlejuice, and pretty much a ton of other movies in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, he was one of those guys where it's like, oh, hey, that guy. It's like, oh, he's... And he also played the dad. As soon as you saw him on camera,
too, you're like, he's going to be the bad guy.
Yeah, well, always. He was in Mom and Dad Saves the World, which is also a terrible movie. He played the dad. He was the good guy in that one.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, he was the good guy in that one. I think it's the last thing I really saw him in before I saw his mugshot because he had a bunch of kiddie porn.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was the good guy in that. The bad guy in that movie was SNL. The liar from
Dana
SNL.
Carvey.
No. He's like, yeah, that's the ticket.
John Lovitz?
Yes, John Lovitz is that guy.
I'm John Lovitz. It stinks. Now on to the casting of the voice of Howard the Duck. And this bit is kind of fun. First of all, here's a list of people who claim to have auditioned and failed. Because, I don't know, I feel like in some interviews I was watching, there's times where they just like to say that they auditioned for Howard the Duck as to, continue a joke that they're having in an interview or this or that. But apparently people who auditioned for the role was Jeff Goldblum, Martin Short, Jay Leno, and John Cusack. And as there are actually some legendary voice actors actually tried out for it too from back in the day. They weren't quite legendary yet, but they would be. Rob Paulson and Townsend Coleman. You might know Rob Paulson from Arthur from The Tick, Yakko Warner, Pinky, Otto Von Scratch and Sniff from Animaniacs, and Raphael from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So on that note, we could have had Yakko Warner doing Howard the Duck.
Oh, that'd been great.
Townsend Coleman, he was known for doing The Tick, Michelangelo, Shredder, and Splinter from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and 7-Up's mascot Spot, among a billion other things. So we could add Michelangelo as Howard the Duck, or Splinter's Howard the Duck or Shredder. That would have been kind of cool too.
There was a whole I heard about the slight off-topic thing. Think about Michelangelo. Remember the original TMNT movie? Or sorry, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie from like the first one.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the first one, they had a whole shtick thing where Splinter was kidnapped, and Raphael went on this like, "Raw, I'm so mad," and he went and got his ass kicked and blah blah blah. That's supposed to be Michelangelo. Like it was supposed to be a character turn for Michelangelo because he's all like the happy, funny one, and when Splinter was kidnapped, he turns dark, and it was kind of a character arc of his where he went from funny to like went full dark, and then kind of like came out the other end and learned a lesson and
a little more gritty.
But they decided to go with Raphael for whatever reason. But even
that sounds like studio interference because they're just like, "Oh man, we need the dorky surfer version of a turtle."
And apparently, like some of the wide shots, like the long shots of him like climbing and being all Splinter, you see nunchucks on his hip instead of the size. Yeah, but when it came down to it, I was more of a Donatello fan. For one reason and one reason only.
Better in the video games?
Video games. Period.
Ha! I knew it. So who landed the role for Howard the Duck? None other than Robin Williams himself. Now keep in mind at this point in history, he's not the beloved Oscar-winning actor or the Aladdin voice or a bunch of other things. He was actually just kind of known as Mork from Ork and the dude who played Popeye in that movie with Shelley Duvall. So, yeah, he's just known as a comedian. So, at this point, it's not like, ooh, Robin Williams, he's an A-list actor. It's like, hey, Robin Williams, he's a comedian. Things started off bad for Robin and only got worse when it came to doing this role. On one of the first days on set, remember Tim Rose, the Admiral Akbar puppeteer, and working on Howard the Duck?
Indeed.
Well, he's showing Robin Williams around the set, and at one point, Robin picked up the microphone that was hooked up to Howard the Duck and, started doing some mimic lines, testing out some voices, giving a shot at what he thinks Howard would sound like. And, well, the voice he was doing sounded exactly like when Tim Rose was doing test reads, the Akbar guy. And as Robin's reading these Howard lines, all of a sudden, over the PA, you can hear the director start screaming, "Rose, you fucking asshole! How many times have I told you not to talk over that microphone when I'm out here doing stuff?" Stagehand immediately runs over to the director and goes, "Hey, that's not Tim Rose, that's Robin Williams doing that voice." Without missing a beat, the director is just like, "Robin, love what you're doing, baby. Keep it up." And Robin Williams, knowing what this kind of indicates, immediately turns to Rose and goes, "Is that the way things are around here?" And Tim Rose responds, "Well, to be honest, he's actually in a pretty good mood today compared to others." And Robin Williams, without missing a beat, goes, "Oh, life is too short to work with people like that." Not a great way to start out on the set for Robin Williams, and didn't really matter because he was gone in under a week anyways. Yeah, that situation didn't help. And the straw that broke the camel's back really for Robin Williams was the fact that, normally they record the voices first and then match the mouths to it in animation, puppetry, pretty much everything like that. Well, this time, because they're behind schedule and everything was all being done all wackadoo, basically Robin Williams had to try to match what he wanted to say to a flapping beak that was just kind of randomly going off. And apparently doing it backwards was just a nightmare. Apparently Robin Williams basically flipped out on set one day and started complaining, "I can't do this. This is insane. I can't get the rhythm of this. I'm being confined. I'm being handcuffed in order to match the flapping duck's bill." And he basically just walked off set because of that. He was just like, "Can't do this. Don't want to do this. Bye. You guys have fun." Maybe he was one of the first ones that realized this movie wasn't going to be good. In the meantime, while Robin Williams was gone and they're scrambling to find somebody, Tim Rose, the Admiral Akbar guy, puppeteer, is working temporarily feeding in lines so they can continue shooting. And then we fast forward to Memorial Day weekend, 1985. A Hollywood agent gets on the phone and calls an actor named Chip Zien. "Mr. Zien, know how you've only done Broadway roles and bit roles and Chips and playing Einstein in 3-2-1 Contact for 2 episodes? Well, guess what role I've got lined up for you," the agent says. "You get your ass on a plane right now, you can be on a Howard the Duck with George Lucas." Apparently, production was in panic and needed someone like right then and there, so they started calling up agents. And Chip's agent was able to get a hold of Chip and literally told him, "If you get on a plane right this moment, I can get you this job." Chip said, "Yep," dropped everything he was doing and hopped up on a plane and just flew right out to Hollywood. basically, that was the last thing they needed to be doing was Chip reading his lines, and then they sent it off to post-production with only a little bit of time left on the clock. They sent it out for test screenings, and the test screenings for Howard the Duck were actually extremely good. Overall, very positive from the people. However, later producer Gloria Katz would, in an interview, said she actually destroyed the majority of the negative review cards because she wanted the studio to think it was going to be really good.
Oh,
yeah. Apparently, I guess I learned today, too, you can have access to your little review cards, too, and destroy them if you want, if you're putting a movie out for screening. Interesting.
Which kind of ruins the whole,
I know it makes you wonder how many times that has happened in history.
I mean, I know it's not exactly a scientific method, so it's not like they're breaking any ethics or anything, but it's still just...
Yeah.
They're doing this for, take a read on a movie. Now, that being said, I also don't like screenings, because I think, there have been too many times where, oh yeah, they were going to do this awesome thing for this franchise, but instead, they showed it to a studio audience, they didn't really like it, so they changed it. It's like, you shouldn't have listened to them.
Yeah, like back when they took out this giant spider from King Kong when we talked about that a while back.
Yeah, it's just like...
So promotion for the movie is its own clusterfuck here. First of all, the film was rated PG, and the fact that a couple of years ago, PG-13 was a brand new thing, so parents automatically assume, hey, if it's PG and not PG-13, it's obviously safe for kids. However, the parents apparently ignored all the advertisements that had ties in with Budweiser and commercials about Howard the Duck smoking and drinking, and even one commercial where Leah Thompson seductively talked about her love of Howard the Duck. Talking about how she likes to run her fingers through his feathers, and he has a nice soft bill and stuff like that. It's yeah, right.
I don't know. I'm not a speciesist or anything, but just...
I think we see your bigotry coming out here.
I mean, I'd be a lot more open to it if it was, not a creature that's of Earth. It's like, oh, here's this other creature that's sentient, and, I don't know. Like a Wookiee, even.
Yeah, something that you couldn't find on this planet.
Yeah, so, I mean, but still, like a duck. Come on, man.
So 30-armed space tentacle god is okay. Duck, not so much. Gotcha.
Yes.
Can't gloss over the fact that there was a 1-900-410 duck number you could call. You got to call it up and get to listen to Howard the Duck, quote unquote, talking to other movie stars and interviewing them. I listened to some clips of this, and they were extremely stupid. It's basically Howard the Duck saying, hey, I'm going to be in this movie with my buddy so-and-so. Hey, buddy so-and-so, what do you think of that? And then it just plays a clip from the movie. And then it goes back to Howard the Duck, be like, ha, 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 isn't that brilliant? Yeah, I mean, dude, they are bad. And they all lasted a few minutes each. And it probably cost you about as much as a used Yugo at that point to listen to them.
Don't you love that anecdote that just happened? I love it when that person talked to that other person.
Yep, that is exactly how they sound about. It's like, you could tell that they didn't even know what clip was going to play next to, the voice act for Howard.
And I can't wait for New York to enjoy this.
Yeah.
I can't wait for everybody out in San Antonio.
Right. At the San Antonio Theater on 3rd Street. You're right there with about the quality of that. Another really weird marketing angle they did when they're hyping up the movie is they wanted to treat Howard the Duck like he was a real alien duck in the movie, being a real alien duck actor. When the actors went out to real actors like Leah Thompson went out and did interviews, they even had to act like Howard was a real duck in the interviews. When they're like, how's it working with Howard? Like, oh, well, since he's an alien from another planet, there's some weird things going down, but he's learning our ways. It's one of the most awkward things you'll see, them trying to be like, oh, no, Howard's a real person. He really is. He's a real actor from a different planet. I don't know why the studio thought that would be a good idea.
That's stupid. I mean,
you can watch the old skits. They're literally just, they're trying to play it off like, oh, no, he's a real duck. Trust us.
Literally no one will buy that.
They shouldn't
buy it. I mean, I don't know. If they're sitting here like, oh, we're not necessarily trying to market to kids, then what are you doing?
Right. I mean, that does seem like something you try to do for kids, huh?
Yeah, that is a marketing you do for children, not marketing you do for...
100%. That probably also helped lead to some of the confusion for the movie. Yeah, and also there was some very unfortunate side effect from this too. Because they were really on this, people need to think Howard is real deal. They didn't let actor Ed Gale into the premieres at all. Because they were like, hey, if people see this dwarf actor showing up at the premieres, they're just going to be like, hey, that's obviously the actor that played Howard. We can't have people knowing that. We can't invite that man here. So that dude had to buy his own tickets to go see the movie if he wanted to see it.
Oh, that's crap. And they could at least give him a free movie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they were just like, hey, we can't have you at this premiere because people will associate you with Howard the Duck, and we got to let people believe that Howard the Duck was real. The voice actor Chip Zien, he was also not invited to the premiere under the same assumption. They're just like, hey, if you show up there and you actually start doing the Howard the Duck voice or people put it together, they'll just think that duck's not real and we can't have that happening. Invested too much time in this. To which I'm guessing everybody involved rolled their eyes so hard they probably never came back down.
Yeah, that's just, come on.
Yeah, Chip didn't even get to go to the premiere or nothing. He had to go to the local theater to see it on premiere day. When he showed up, he noticed that it was mostly parents with their kids. And he kind of freaked out because he was well aware this is not a kid's movie. So he ran around the theater before it started. He's like, you shouldn't be here with your kid. This is not really a kid movie. And after he did that for a couple minutes, he realized he was all of a sudden that creepy, weird dude telling people to leave a theater. So he kind of simmered down. Yeah. He tried to help them, but also he really, wait a minute, I might get the cops called on me or get shot.
Yeah, at some point you realize, okay, no one's taking me seriously here.
Yep. Yeah, eventually just like, okay, well.
I just need to let this happen. And they'll realize I'm right later. I mean, they'll be like, oh, sorry for not listening to you. But...
Who was that creep? Yeah, somehow I doubt they'll wind up to him as you wait outside the theater. We owe you an apology, random stranger. Movie gets released, and it gets released to very poor reviews and poor box office receipts. Viewers disliked it because, despite being adult-themed advertising, everybody thought it was for kids, so they brought their kids along. And their kids apparently didn't like it because they're like, what's this going on here, Mom? Can you explain these things to me? Why does that duck have boobs? Yeah.
Well, I think even adults like, why does that duck have boobs?
Yeah, even adults were like, what is this weirdness? Critics also hated this movie because, well, they just said it was a bad movie. Gene Siskel just flat out called it a quote-unquote stupid film. And Leonard Maltin, he openly questioned why they went with live action when it should have been perfectly good for an animated movie. He could not understand why they didn't make it animated.
And that was the correct question.
Yes, it was. Yeah, Leonard Maltin was just like, why not animated? Why this monstrosity? A couple other critics apparently actually said that too. Leonard Maltin was actually just the most famous I knew. It won the Razzie for that year as released and was nominated for Worst Movie of the 80s. My opinion is far from the worst movie of the 80s. It's honestly, it's not horrible. It's like maybe a 5 out of 10. Oh, it's just got some really bad pacing things and some shots going way too long, but there's some all right moments to have there.
This is by far, not the worst movie in the 80s. Yeah. Anybody who says it is just wrong.
They're just saying it to sound popular and start a conversation.
Yeah, the worst movie in the 80s? I mean, now that being said, I can't exactly bring one out from my head like, oh no, this is worse. But, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. There's a bunch of trauma movies that were pretty bad.
Right? I mean, hell.
Or trauma-esque movies that weren't quite as good as Trauma, but just awful. Or, some of those Roger Corman films of the 80s.
Superman 4.
There you go.
That was awful. It was awful, and it was even worse because, at least with Howard the Duck, it was the first outing. As it's not the fourth in a series where it's just like that steadily. They got steadily worse as they went along.
A few things from the movie to go over with, just because interesting little tidbits and stuff. So there's a scene at the beginning of the movie, like right towards the beginning, where Howard's just sitting in his chair, minding his own business, when suddenly he gets yanked out of through his apartment, busting through walls, past her masturbating duck in the bath, and sucked into a big sky vagina. It's true. He gets yanked through all these walls through his building, and at one point there's a female duck sitting there with a wine glass just masturbating in the tub.
I remember.
He busts through the wall, and she goes right back to going at it. So, yeah.
That's disturbing.
Yeah, that is.
No, sir, I don't like it.
Howard the Duck gets yanked past a masturbating duck and right into a giant big sky vagina. And yes, it's a big pink hole in the sky, Nate. And that scene, though, is important for one reason. Because for that whole scene, they basically had Howard the Duck on a guide wire track on this chair and everything. And this was the first instance ever that they used CGI to delete guide wires from a scene. And this would be something that pretty much every action movie from then on out would use. Probably the most famous scene was a Matrix bullet dodging scene where, the whole lean back.
Yeah.
Yep. Howard the Duck technology was used for that.
Yeah.
And as he gets sucked into the big sky vagina, we get to hear a blowhard narration that basically flat out states, yeah, this franchise is going to be a hit and it's going to be around for a while. Here's the narration, Nate, as he goes into it. Big words coming up on the screen and everything. The cosmos. Countless worlds upon worlds. Worlds without end. In these galaxies, every possible reality exists. And what is reality on any one world is mere fantasy on all others. Here, all is real and all is illusion. what is, what was, and what will be start here with the words, in the beginning, there was Howard the Duck. And then the credits start rolling. Now, if that doesn't scream setting up a franchise, I don't know what does.
Yeah, or attempt at least.
Yeah, or an attempt. Also, it sounds like they're setting up a little bit of multiverse stuff there, too.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Also, in this movie, you get to hear someone refer to cocaine as toot, which is something that I'm pretty sure died off with the 80s. Gang member sees Howard the Duck crawl out of a dumpster. Somebody's like, man, I'm too high on toot for this.
Toot.
Also, you can see an all-female biker gang called Satan's Sluts. And all this I just described happens in like the first 10 minutes, so you can see why parents were a little weirded out.
Yeah, from the jump. Like, oh,
yeah,
man.
from the jump, it's
on?
just straight up like, hey, this is adult-oriented stuff. Mommy, what's Satan's Sluts mean? Yeah, it leads to some awkward conversations, I'm sure.
What was that duck doing in the bathtub?
Yeah. I see Mommy doing that in the bathtub sometimes when Daddy's gone. At the end of the movie, where they're fighting the giant stop-motion monster that the studio insisted be put in, there's a scene where Howard fires a laser cannon at the big baddie. Pyro goes off and, the Howard the Duck head gets set on fire and some of the suit gets set on fire with young 12-year-old Jordan Prentice inside of the suit. Panic ensues and he was put out with fire extinguishers. Thankfully, he was fine and he was actually kind of okay with it, but Labor and Industries and OSHA was not. This scene actually got it a mark with the Child Endangerment Act, or Child Actor Endangerment Act. So I guess if there's going to be a lot of fire around, don't send your 12-year-old out there to be in the scene. It seems kind of weird they had him out there for that at all. So, Howard the Duck, now considered a commercial and critical failure. All plans for a sequel are scrapped. And the idea of making another movie based off of a Marvel license is so tarnished, no one tries again until 1998's Blade.
Blade?
So, Blade.
Oh, okay, yes, the next, okay.
Yeah, that was the next Marvel movie to come out. It took 22 years for another Marvel movie to be made because everybody's like, well, that don't work. Comic movies, apparently that's not going to be a thing. I mean, there was like the Punisher movie and some made-for-TV movies.
I was about to say, I could have sworn there was like more than that.
Yeah, but we're talking about theatrical releases.
Okay.
Yeah, I should have stipulated that earlier.
Was the Punisher with Dolph Lundgren? Was that a direct-to-DVD?
That was made for TV movie. I actually had to look that up.
I didn't
that movie's only like an hour and 6 minutes long.
I had no idea that was.
Yeah, or maybe wasn't made for TV. Maybe it was direct to video, is what it was. But yeah, it was never in theaters.
Yeah,
unless it was shown as like some schlock thing later down the road.
And that, oh man, it's so bad too. It's depressing.
It is bad. The only thing I mainly remember that was naked Dolph Lundgren like meditating in the sewers, and I was like, this doesn't seem very Punisher-y.
I mean, I remember more than that, but it wasn't good. It just wasn't. It had to do the Yakuza. They were stealing kids and da-da-da-da. And it ends up at the very end where he's like, 89 minutes. It was giving a worldwide theatrical release, except in the United States, Sweden, and South Africa.
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, it was straight to VHS. It was direct to video in America.
Yeah. Is your mind blowing, Nathan?
It is blown.
So, Howard the Duck. That year, it was a financial flop. As far as box office went, it was 54th in the box office for that year. And we're going to go over some movies that when it came out that year, because this was actually a stacked year for movies that came out. The movies that it did better at the box office. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Raw Deal, Armed and Dangerous with John Candy, Maximum Overdrive by Stephen King, Big Trouble in Little China, Highlander, Troll, Transformers the movie, Clue, Labyrinth, and Little Shop of Horrors. So it did better than those movies. The movies that made much more money than it: American Tail, Aliens, Top Gun, Crocodile Dundee, Flight of the Navigator, The Fly, Short Circuit, Three Amigos, and for some reason, Song of the South re-release. Yeah, but
the Song of the South re-release.
Yeah, you remember the old zippity doo dah?
Oh no, totally.
Yeah,
they
re-released it in theaters back then, and apparently it did all right.
Well, yeah, of course it did all right because oh man,
it's Disney, and also Disney was like not releasing anything around that time of note, really. I don't think.
Yeah, I love how the Disney vault's basically gone out the window because they're like, I remember the Disney vault. Oh, we're releasing Pinocchio from this month to this month, and that's it. And then we're gonna lock it back up. Yep. Nowadays, the age of streaming is like, okay, you can lock it back up, but then you're just getting by piracy. Like if you want to make something on this, then put on Disney Plus or have it available because the moment you lock it away, we're just gonna pirate it.
Yep, we will.
That's the end of it.
And we are morally right to pirate it too, because F them.
Right.
So as you can guess, with the movie tanking, immediately the actors and crew start distancing themselves from the movie. They immediately turned on the film and proclaimed how they always thought it was just a one-time paycheck. And this movie was crap. From the start, we just knew it wasn't going to be anything. They're all lying, Nate. They all thought they were on the gravy train with meatball wheels, wherever that term is. One aside is between this movie's financial losses and the divorce he was going through, George Lucas actually in 1986 had to sell off the graphics group, which he felt underperformed on this movie. Who wound up buying this? Steve Jobs, who promptly renamed it Pixar. This kind of goes back to, Howard the Duck comic being remade because of chicken bones being mailed out or bird bones being mailed out. Directly leads to Pixar being formed. I mean, in a real roundabout way, but we can pretend, right?
Right.
Yeah. Also, in 1986 was Howard's first appearance back in the comics since the original series or the magazine. He shows up in an episode where he's extremely depressed and goes through It's a Wonderful Lifestyle story motions. So whether he's depressed about the movie or not, I'm not sure. Couldn't find a copy of the comic to read. And even though it has multiple stories in it, on the cover of this magazine, it says, "Not for kids, we mean it." I would kind of wonder if that was a slight jab at the movie thing. People be like, "Hey,
oh, sure.
Yeah."
I mean, especially after the reception, people go in there and their kids looking at duck boobs.
Yeah. Duck memories, yes. Yeah, that had to be a fun meeting where they're just like, "Hey, we need a female duck here." Well, what do female ducks have? They got knockers. Give her knockers. I want to feel up a duck knockers on set. So after that appearance in the comics in 1986, Howard would just kind of show up sporadically here and there, guest appearances, showing up alongside of Spider-Man. Showed up in She-Hulk a lot because, the humor kind of matched up with them. And at one point, even teamed up in DC and merged with Lobo to make Lobo the Duck. And basically, just his little guest starring and stuff would keep on going until the year 2000, when Marvel would contact Steve Gerber to do a new Howard the Duck series. See, Marvel was launching its new Max sub-brand of comics to be geared towards adults, and Marvel wanted a 6-issue Howard the Duck miniseries to go along with it. Do you remember that Max line that came out? Yeah, I'd actually forgotten about it until doing this research. Gerber sat down with his artists, and they decided to design Howard the Duck and start making this comic. So they had their design for Howard the Duck ready and went to the higher-ups at Marvel, who looked at those and said, "You forgot about that whole Disney thing, didn't you?" And they said, "Well, we thought that kind of passed by now." They're like, nah. Disney ain't going to be happy with these drawings. You got to change some stuff up on them. So Gerber, now probably having some triggered PTSD, was again very pissed. So he went to the Marvel higher-ups with a new plan. He's like, "Hey, isn't Howard more personality first and character design second? How about for this miniseries, we try something different, like we make him into a mouse." Kind of a jab at Mickey Mouse. Mm-hmm. And the Marvel higher-ups were like, "You know what? We actually kind of like that because it is more about the personality than anything else." Hey, and they even went one step further and like, "Hey, maybe we should make him a variety of animals for this series. Let's do that. We'll call it Howard the Zoo." And that was kind of the unofficial name for that miniseries. Is he was mainly a mouse through the entire thing, but he would pop up as the occasional different critters that, getting shot by ray guns, whatever. All of a sudden he's Howard the Moose. Yeah, I couldn't find copies of to read either, so I tried. Gerber actually wanted to take advantage of this situation and suggested they put out a reader poll so fans could vote for their favorite new animal persona for Howard. His new fursona, as it would be. And then he's going to be like, "Hey, whatever the fans vote for, we'll permanently change it to that." Mainly, he wanted this as a way to get out from under Disney, so that way he could just go back to designing character the way he wanted to without being like, "Hey, I'm handcuffed here."
Right.
Yep. The series came out and was pretty popular. The series featured longtime Howard the Duck antagonist Dr. Bong, who was not, in fact, a bong, but a bell-themed villain.
Oh.
I'm guessing his origins were probably a joke back in the 70s, because bongs were around in the 70s.
Yeah, bongs were in the 70s, but I'm sure they didn't call them. I don't know. Maybe
here's the thing. Back then, you had to call them water pipes or they'd kick you out of the smoke shop because bongs were used for smoking marijuana. Water pipes were used for smoking tobacco. So the series also mainly parodied popular comics of the time, and they did a good job parodying Sandman, Preacher, Witchblade, and more in the series, which were the popular comics at the time. Howard the Duck spoofing Preacher might be kind of fun, or Sandman.
Was that old school Sandman or new Sandman? Current Sandman.
I believe the current Sandman, the DC Sandman.
Well, yeah, they were both DC Sandman. But one DC Sandman, he was like an old school guy, old timey thing. But then the new Sandman's like the Dream Morpheus.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a Dream Morpheus guy.
Okay.
I mean, this is early 2000s. I don't think they're going to lampoon stuff from the 70s.
Yeah, true.
I mean, they might, but... And also, if they're lampooning Preacher, I'm assuming they're also doing the newer stuff, too. And Witchblade. Sadly, this would be the final time Steve Gerber and Howard the Duck would work together, as Gerber passed away due to illness in 2008. Sad times.
Sad times.
Yeah. One last note with him, though. In Marvel's Secret Wars 2, there was a character named Thundersword, who was Stuart Caldwell, a television writer empowered by the Beyonder. He's actually a parody of scriptwriter Steve Gerber. And if you look at the pictures of him, it's like he looks identical to Steve Gerber. So, there you go. There's an in memoriam of Steve Gerber. He's in Secret Wars 2. I don't know if it was a really flattering image of him or whatnot, but depiction of him, but I don't know. Didn't read it. 2009 rolls around, and with Steve Gerber finally out of the way, Disney makes its move to acquire Marvel Comics. I'm sure
finally out of the way.
Yeah, I'm sure that they're not related, but it's fun to think that, Steve Gerber was like the last bastion holding back Disney. Disney like, we want to make our move here, but we got Steve Gerber there being angry and pissy. Oh, it's like standing out front with like a pitchfork fending off Will Eisner or whoever it is back then.
I promise you, if he was the only thing standing in the way of Disney, he would have died a lot sooner. And he accidentally fell out of a window.
Yeah, Steve Gerber was so depressed over the Howard the Duck movie that he just happened to fall out of a second-story window and land on a bunch of bullets.
Right? And meanwhile, someone randomly shooting in the air. Yeah, they're not supposed to do that, but he landed on the bullets.
Yeah, he died from the fall, but that fall's only like 8 feet. Well, yeah, he landed on a bunch of bullets, too, in the process. So after Disney bites, and probably because the lawsuit really didn't matter anymore, Howard starts showing up pretty much everywhere. Starts appearing in new miniseries. One of them where Howard the Human shows up on a planet of ducks in a little role swapping. And another 2-shot where he teams up with Squirrel Girl. Howard the Duck and Squirrel Girl. Who's a very popular character who I know very little of. Squirrel Girl. It's also fun to say.
What, Squirrel Girl?
Squirrel Girl.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of nice. And I thought they hired someone to play Squirrel Girl, like a live action, but they never really did anything with it.
They did, and it didn't go anywhere. And it was the chick who's like she's in the AT&T commercials. Yeah. And they actually had test shots of her, and she looked really good as Squirrel Girl, actually.
Who apparently, Squirrel Girl is friends with Galactus.
Oh, impressive.
Yeah, they exchange Christmas cards.
Oh, neat.
Apparently she has the highest win rate with terms of villains, because most of the villains she quote unquote wins, she befriends. She defeated Galactus by befriending him.
Yeah, so, I actually have seen articles written about how she's like the most powerful Marvel character because she's like lost the least battles or something like that.
Yeah,
like on a technicality, it's actually Squirrel Girl. Which, hey, whatever works, man.
Like whatever gets you sleep, man. That's fine.
So outside of his little mini-series he did, he started showing up as guest appearances in a lot of comics, and also now starts showing up in animated shows. Before the Disney acquisition, far as I can tell, the only animated thing he ever showed up in was an episode of the original X-Men cartoon where he's on a shirt that Beast is wearing. And that's literally the only appearance of a cartoon before, I would say 2012, I believe. 2014, to the delight of fanboys everywhere, Howard the Duck pops up in the MCU and is voiced by one Seth Green. For the voice, Yay, Seth Green. For the voice, Seth Green is just doing an impression of Danny DeVito. So if you want to know where that voice comes from, it's Seth Green doing a Danny DeVito impression.
I didn't realize that. I guess I just heard Seth Green in his role with it. I didn't really think too much deeper into it.
Yep. Yeah, usually if you ask a voice actor, like, hey, what's your source behind this or your inspiration? Yep, this is Danny DeVito. Also, for the record, Howard the Duck did survive the blip in the Marvel movies. Whether that matters to you or not, I don't know. I just found out while researching.
Well, if he survived, so he wasn't vanished, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seth Green also provided the voices for him in the television appearances of What If and the Guardians of the Galaxy, and also Ultimate Spider-Man on Disney XD when he showed up.
Oh, is he in that too?
Yep. Just little bit parts. In a 2016 interview, Rob Zombie says he once pitched a Howard the Duck movie idea to Marvel, but they turned it down. 2018, and Leah Thompson says in an interview she's preparing to meet with Marvel over her idea for a new Howard the Duck movie. She's actually still a fan of Howard the Duck after all these years and still thinks actually the character has great potential to be in a movie and would like to be part of the movie too. Maybe not, as a continuation of the old character, but just, be part of it because, again, she likes the character. That's cool. Hulu intended to air a Howard the Duck animated series that was going to be written and produced by Kevin Smith and Dave Willis. That would have eventually led up to a crossover featuring Howard the Duck, MODOK, Hitmonkey, Tigra, and Dazzler, and it was going to be called The Offenders. However, in January 2020, Hulu canceled Howard the Duck series and scrapped all plans for The Offenders as well. And that's essentially where we stand right now. Howard is mainly a guest star in the MCU and cartoon series. I'm sure he's going to get some more comic miniseries coming up soon because he's still a highly popular character, and that's good news for fans.
Is
so
he?
There we have it. Howard the Duck.
Is he still popular?
As far as I know, because I remember people were like all over themselves when he showed up on the What If. I remember everybody was super stoked about that. But yeah, as far as I know, he's pretty popular with fans. I mean, as far as I know, whenever he's not on screen, everybody's asking, "Where's Howard?" That's how you get a character popular. Whenever he's not on screen, everybody should be asking, "Where's Howard?"
Out loud.
Yep. Just like old Poochie. So there you go, Nate. Have you learned anything fun and exciting this episode?
I did.
Yay.
I learned that Howard the Duck was actually popular and he did things.
Yeah, he did do things. Many things, including succeeding and failing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think they should come out with another movie about him, but again, they need to fix their mistake and just ditch live action. There's no.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure at this point it'd be all CGI, or actually they can even pull out the CGI / live action thing. Okay, nowadays I would guess.
Or even if they did the animation for like they did for the What Ifs.
So now, hopefully, you at home have learned things about Howard the Duck too, and now your life has been enriched with what we have said today. This is where the ending jingle goes. This is where the ending jingle goes. I don't know if we need one. I don't know if we'll get one. But if we do, then here is where it goes.